Blue Origin has made history. After the first successful mission of their orbital heavy lift rocket, New Glenn, they showed on the second launch that they can also land their booster. A flawless mission, a picture-perfect launch, 2 NASA probes safely on their way to Mars, and the first successful booster landing on the Jacqueline in the Atlantic. The first company after SpaceX to have achieved that. 10 minutes after launch, the 58-meter tall giant was standing on its feet again, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. We're already used to that with SpaceX's Falcon 9. But aside from them, no one else has managed to do it with an orbital booster so far. There are a few differences between the two systems, but there's one thing I find especially cool about the New Glenn. It actually welds itself to the deck of the landing platform after landing. Let's go over the flight sequence, break down the technology, and see what this really means. Because Blue Origin moves from one moment to the next. No longer just a player with a lot of capital and even more potential, but truly a serious competitor for SpaceX. One that SpaceX, or rather the market, has needed for years. My name is Serwan and this is Mars Chronicles. Let's go. The launch took place at 9:55 p.m. Central European Time from Launch Complex 36 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida and was nominal from the very first second. The 7 BE-4 engines ignited simultaneously and together delivered over 1,700 tons of thrust. That's about half as much as a Saturn V or 1,000 tons more than a Falcon 9. The 98-meter rocket launched smoothly, with no visible vibrations or roll maneuvers. The max Q phase at T plus 90 seconds was passed smoothly, and already at T plus 3 minutes and 20 seconds, the two stages separated. The booster, named Never Tell Me the Odds, immediately turned around and headed toward Jacqueline, about 600 kilometers off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic. Meanwhile, the upper stage, completely unfazed, ignited its 2 vacuum-optimized BE-3U engines and reached a stable parking orbit. It released the 2 SGP satellites after about 34 minutes. The 2 identical NASA probes, Blue and Go, are now on a long, efficient trajectory to Mars. They will arrive in 2027, park in different Mars orbits, and measure the magnetosphere as well as atmospheric loss to understand why Mars lost its water. That's not just scientifically invaluable, but also highly relevant for future manned missions. We finally know how strong the radiation belt really is there. But the real star of the show was, of course, the landing. The booster re-entered the atmosphere at about Mach 6. The control surfaces steered it precisely, and the re-entry burn with 3 engines reduced the speed to under 1 kilometer per second, exactly as we know it from the Falcon 9. The boosters do that to avoid hitting the dense layers of the atmosphere at too high a speed. Otherwise, it's like doing a belly flop into the water. Unlike the first mission, Blue Origin gave us incredible footage of the returning booster. Here you can see it falling back down. After 8 minutes and 32 seconds, the central BE-4 engine ignited for landing, slowed down, and continued to fall until it disappeared into a cloud layer. For a brief moment, the booster was gone. Then we got this perspective directly from the booster's point of view. Blue took it a step further, and we even got the sound to go with the picture. At first, there was nothing but water to see, and suddenly the drone ship Jacqueline appeared in the picture. The legs were extended hydraulically as the booster neared the water's surface. At this point, it sounded at Blue Origin as if they were broadcasting the sound of a soccer stadium. The employees were completely out of control. Unfortunately, the video froze a bit, so Blue switched to this drone perspective of the ship. Right at the 9-minute mark, you could see how the booster's exhaust stirred up and evaporated the water surface. At this point, I thought they had just missed the target. Then we got this perspective which shows that the booster didn't hit above the ship but next to it. So the image stayed frozen for a few seconds before these pictures trickled in. You can clearly see how the booster slowly approaches the surface of the landing platform, shuts off the engine, and stands. No tilting, no fire, no drama, nothing. That's even more impressive because the booster is almost twice as heavy as a Falcon 9 booster. Shortly after, Jeff Bezos himself posted this footage, which is also edited, but you can see much better how the booster hovers and maneuvers. And here it is again from far away and without any interference. But what actually happened here? There is a big difference between the landing approach of the Falcon 9 and the New Glenn. The Falcon 9 performs a so-called suicide burn. In this process, the booster decelerates in such a way that it reaches exactly 0 kilometers per hour right at the landing zone. This must be exact every time or it will crash on the pad or lift off again. Because even at its lowest throttle setting, a Merlin engine is still too powerful for the booster to be able to hover. So SpaceX is forced to perform this maneuver every time. The BE-4 engines are more throttleable, and the booster is heavier, which means New Glenn boosters can hover, just like New Shepard does. It approaches the landing zone much more slowly than a Falcon 9 and makes the final adjustments over several seconds. It aligns itself for landing and touches down on the surface. After landing, the smoke dissipates and the booster was just standing there. And then this happened. At 9 minutes and 42 seconds, a few small explosions could be seen. At first, I thought it was leftover fuel being flushed out and igniting on the hot surface. But later, I found out that Blue Origin has had a patent since 2021 that welds at least part of the landing legs to the deck. Completely automatic. If we look at the slow motion again, we see a few small elements flying away. And that's exactly where this ingenious but also pretty wild patent comes into play, which Blue Origin has had since 2021. In the lower sections of the landing legs, special bonding devices are installed. They are small, autonomous units filled with energetic material. So basically a kind of highly precise pyrotechnic stuff, which you usually know from explosive welding or ammunition. As soon as the booster lands safely, the engines are off and sensors confirm that everything is stable. This material is automatically ignited. The resulting extremely short-lived shockwave and heat fuse the material of the band with the steel of the deck in milliseconds. A proper metallurgical bond is created, rock solid and without the need for even a single wrench. The entire process runs fully autonomously at sea, even in waves and wind. And it was exactly these small controlled explosions that we saw at 9 minutes and 42 seconds when a few elements flew off. Crazy complex, yes, but also absolutely brilliant because it immediately secures the booster against tipping or sliding without having to spend hours screwing or clamping later. At least 2 of the 6 legs were welded to the deck like this. This helps keep the booster from sliding or tipping over, which has already happened at SpaceX. The advantage here is clear: a booster that doesn't slide around. The disadvantage is that your landing legs become more prone to wear and tear, and so does your landing surface. And not to forget, it adds an extra layer of complexity. Because when you look at the patent, it quickly becomes clear that you can't just weld the landing legs of an orbital booster to the deck of an autonomous landing platform at sea completely autonomously. That takes quite a bit of effort. But if that means you can secure a booster worth $100 million, then I'm happy to be convinced. What does that mean for the future now? Blue Origin has shown that they can not only build big rockets, but also use them purposefully and reuse them. At least they have proven that the booster can land. They must now prove in the next few months that they can refurbish and restore it to operation. Through this mission, the New Glenn is now also certified for national security space launch missions, which means it is now eligible for the lucrative Pentagon contracts. It also means that they now have to rapidly ramp up production and launch cadence. Kuiper must launch about 1,400 satellites by mid-2026 to keep its Federal Communications Commission license. Specifically, the plan is for the same booster, never tell me the odds, to launch the Blue Moon Pathfinder toward the moon in January 2026. Next is a rideshare mission with the National Reconnaissance Office. No booster is assigned yet. And starting in mid-2026, the first Kuiper missions are planned. At SpaceX, the order books are completely full for the next few years. But now the New Glenn is coming to the market, which transports payloads for half the price per kilogram compared to SpaceX. The launch price of the New Glenn and Falcon 9 is about the same for both, around 70 to 100 million. But Ersra can carry almost twice the amount of payload, and now they have a lot of available capacity. The New Glenn is now going to enter the market very aggressively and secure as much market share as possible before more players gain a foothold and want a piece of the pie too. The booster is currently designed for at least 25 flights. The BE-4 engines run on liquefied natural gas, which is cheaper and cleaner than rocket propellant 1, and the production rate is expected to be increased. Amazon Skyper has already booked over 30 launches. The United States military is watching with interest. And suddenly, Blue Origin is no longer just the other player. Sure, they're 10 years behind SpaceX, but if they keep up this pace, the market is going to get really exciting. Because something exciting is happening here. Some of the staff at Blue Origin will probably start working on refurbishing the boosters now. But another part of the team probably doesn't have much left to do now. So Blue Origin could just lay them off or assign them to develop more systems. They're actually doing some really cool things. Among other things, they're working on making moon dust usable. I would also be really happy if they started developing a fully reusable and even larger launch system similar to Starship. Because Starship will also need competition to stay healthy. Below you'll find a few videos about their technologies. Technically flawless, visually impressive, and a clear signal. The competition is getting tougher, prices are dropping, and we're all getting to the stars faster. What do you think? Has Blue Origin really arrived now? Write it in the comments. If you like this first New Glenn landing analysis, subscribe to Mars Chronicles and give a thumbs up. Many thanks to all channel members and Patreon supporters. If you also want early access to our videos, you can find all the information about it below in the video description. My name is Serwan, and this was Mars Chronicles. Thank you for tuning in. Per aspera ad astra.